This man locked his own daughter in a basement for 25 years. Craziest thing, nobody knew. Not even his neighbors or his friends or his own wife, who lived in the exact same house upstairs. Now her name was Elizabeth, and from the moment she was just 18 years old, Joseph Fritzl, her own father, dragged her into the hidden underground bunker. And from the outside, he claimed he built this bomb shelter, but in reality, it was his daughter's own prison, and for decades he kept her in there and did the most disturbing things. And down there he forced her to live in complete secrecy. Nobody knew his own daughter was in that basement, and in those years she gave birth to 7 children, all non-consensually, by the way. And this is what makes the story disturbing. Imagine being trapped in this soundproof basement, raising children by your own father without even wanting to be there, and nobody even knew you existed. You lived your whole life without anyone even knowing your existence. How did Joseph Fritzl manage to even pull this off? And how did nobody realize what was happening in all those years? And finally, what led to him actually getting caught and prosecuted? And how did she manage to finally escape? Hello everyone. Today, we're going to dive into the story of the girl in the basement. Now, just a disclaimer, this story was so disturbing and so famous that they actually made a Netflix documentary movie about this. It's based on real events. And before we even get started in this story, I just want to make a little disclaimer. There are a lot of horrible, most really disturbing things that happen in this story that I will try my best to kind of water down, but I'm going to try to describe it as accurate as possible. But do keep in mind that this story does have a somewhat of a happy ending, as disturbing as it is throughout. Now, this man, he was born in the year 1935 in Austria. By all accounts, his childhood was pretty rough. I mean, his father left when he was just a little baby, and his mom was very, very strict. And people say he grew up craving control, but honestly, a bad childhood doesn't actually excuse what he does in the future. But that's just to give a little background of his life. I mean, from the outside, Joseph Fritzl, he just looked like a normal family man. He had a wife, and his wife was called Rosemary, and she was the wife that lived with him in the house when all that happened. He was actually doing well in life. He was an electrical engineer. He was a smart guy. Just imagine a regular dude living in Austria, has a good job. He was getting paid very well. But here's the thing though, behind this ordinary mask, he was planning something horrifying. And this wasn't just a random, this was actually very calculated. Every move he made was building up to what he's happened to do to his own daughter. Now, let's talk about the basement, the place that would become Elizabeth's prison. See, in the 1970s, Fritzl started building what he claimed was a bomb shelter. Remember, this was the time where there was Cold War, and having a bomb shelter wasn't something too unusual. Maybe not everyone had their own bomb shelter, but because he was well off, he was having a lot of money, building a bomb shelter didn't sound suspicious at all. So he decided he's going to build a bomb shelter underneath his house. And the neighbors didn't even think twice about why he would build a bomb shelter or a basement in his own house. But Fritzl wasn't actually building this for protection. He was building it as a cage, a prison, a hidden bunker. That thing was reinforced and soundproofed with multiple locked doors. And this is another key element to what actually made sure that he never got caught throughout all these years and no one heard a thing, even throughout the screaming and shouting and all the stuff that happened in that basement for decades and decades. Also, the creepiest part about the basement was the entrance was disguised behind a shelf in his workshop. So people wouldn't even know there was an entrance to this bunker. I mean, even if he had visitors come to his house, no one's going to suspect behind a shelf there was going to be an entrance to a bunker. And it wasn't just a basement, it was a dungeon. He spent years making sure no one would ever find it, and it worked because no one did find it. Now let's get a flashback of Elizabeth, and let's fast forward to the year 1984. Elizabeth, his daughter. Now remember I said he had a few children, and one of them was called Elizabeth, and that is the daughter who was the victim of this story. Now when Elizabeth just turned 18, she was about to start her adult life. When someone starts 18, that's the time where they can finally be independent, finally be free, and live their own life how they want to live it without having control of their parents. But that's not exactly what happened to Elizabeth, because one day he asked his daughter Elizabeth to help him carry a door down to the basement. And for her father, he was strict and abusive in the past, before he even locked her in the basement, he did have signs of aggression. He would sometimes be a bit creepy with her when she was younger, but it's been years since he's done anything, and she kind of completely forgot and didn't suspect anything. She was afraid of him and she hated him, and she was actually planning to move the next day out of the house and live with her sister. But before that could even happen, her father told her, "Let's help me move this door down to the basement. We're trying to fix something, and then you can move on and do whatever you want." But little did she know that was the last time she'll ever leave this house for a very long time. Because while she was helping him fix the door in the basement, he grabbed a tissue with some sort of chemicals that instantly dozed her off. She breathed this substance which took her consciousness away, and he locked that door, and that moment he realized he was completely in control. He had his own daughter in this underground basement, and no one could hear her scream. In fact, he literally told her that when she got up, he tied her chained to a wall. Now, he chained her in very tight chains where she could barely even move. And that moment, reality really kicked in for her. She noticed she didn't have many friends. She had no one that would actually help her get out. And the only reason why if she went missing, the police wouldn't even look for her is because, first of all, she's 18 now, so finding a missing person who's over 18 would be a lot more difficult, as the police don't do as much effort if they were a kid. And also, she did run away in the past and the police brought her back into her house. And another thing is, her father was really smart about it, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, she was tied in that basement, and her own father literally whispered in her ear, "No one is gonna hear you scream in here." He was planning something very evil in that basement, which we come later to find out that it was 100% true, and he wasn't planning anything good. She ended up having to live in that basement with no windows, barely any space, no fresh air, just concrete walls, and every single day Fritzl will come down. Her father would come down every single day and abuse her. And what I mean by abuse her is not just hitting her, smacking, like absolutely abuse her and essaying her every day. It started off once a day, which is absolutely horrible, and it was stated that over the past 25 years she claimed that he abused her over 3,000 times, which explains how they managed to have 7 children in that basement. For me, the most surprising part is how did they manage to even stay alive with no fresh air, no view of the outside world for all those years. Over these years, things got suspicious after they had a baby, and Joseph really had to find an excuse to why his daughter is missing. See, his daughter just disappeared suddenly, and he had to explain to his wife, his friends, and the neighborhood where she is, and even the police. So this evil man decided to let the police know that, listen, my daughter is actually missing because she joined a cult somewhere far away. He actually went and reported her missing to the police himself to get all the suspicions away from him. And I'm surprised this even worked, because his wife, who really did love him, and we later come to find out that his own wife didn't even snitch on him or didn't even go against him in court when he finally did get caught and admitted to all these allegations. His wife didn't even stand up against him in court, which is kind of suspicious to me, and I have my own theory about this, but I'm going to discuss this later. So Fritzl, the dad, told the police that his daughter joined a cult, and the police did not get suspicious. At some point, his wife did get suspicious, because what he would do is some of the babies that he had downstairs, they couldn't live in that basement any longer. I mean, the health conditions were terrible. There was no way you can survive, and the babies that were there would get ill. So in total, over the past 25 years, they had 7 children born in that basement. But because of the living conditions, some of them had to get sent upstairs to live a different and better life, and they couldn't all be kept in that basement. Their first daughter, Kirsten, which she stayed there till she was 19 years old. She lived in the basement her whole life. And so did Stefan, their eldest son. He was born in 1990. He also was born in the basement, and he had to stay there also until he was 18 years old when they got rescued. Now, the 3 children that actually managed to live upstairs and get out of the basement was Lisa, Monica, and Alex, all 3 of them got sent upstairs, and he did this in a smart way. How did he manage to get them out of the basement without any suspicion? He literally left the baby as soon as it was born at the doorstep of the house. He forced his daughter, who was still in the basement, to write a note saying that she's giving her child away and she couldn't take care of them. Remember, everyone thinks the daughter Elizabeth is doing well and she's living her own life in a cult where she just wants to stay away from everyone. So no one even knows she's in the basement. When the child was born in that basement and they couldn't take care of it under the basement, what he would do is force his daughter to write a note in her own handwriting so it would look very non-suspicious and it would look normal. And he would take that baby out of the basement when no one's around, put it outside the doorstep, leaving the note right next to it, and then he would walk away and pretend like, oh, he just found the baby and his daughter just left it there for them to take care of. So when the wife opens the door the next morning and she sees a baby outside with a note, she thinks, okay, my daughter is sending us her baby because she can't take care of it, fine, we'll adopt it. And that's exactly what happens. And it happened to 3 of the children. These are the 3 children who I'd say are a bit more fortunate. They still lived a horrifying life with their father being abusive, because remember, Joseph was mentally he was insane. He literally was super abusive. He had this obsession over control. He wanted to take control of everyone. Also, there was another dark story about his mother, which we will have to leave till the end because it was going to confuse the story. At some point throughout the years, people got suspicious, and one of them being his wife Rosemary. And also the neighborhood did kind of feel suspicious because they did spot him going to the basement every single day at 9 p.m. and bringing in some weird items. I mean, they would see him going to the basement. Why would he go into the basement every single day for all those years? What are you doing in that basement? But they didn't actually report anything, and for all the world knows, he was just a regular person working a normal job. At some point when they had their 4th child, Monica, Joseph decided to send her upstairs the same way by pretending like his daughter gave it away for adoption because she couldn't take care of it, and he forced his daughter to write the same note. This time he even faked some phone calls with voice recordings to make things more realistic. In case his wife got suspicious when she found the baby with the note next to it, he faked a pre-recorded phone call where his daughter would call and let them know that she's giving away Monica for adoption because she can take care of it. Now this is when his wife Rosemary actually gets suspicious, and she actually does report this to the police and the authorities. She doesn't even know that the suspect is her own husband. That's why she is kind of suspicious about her daughter being missing and not coming to see her family all these years and joining a cult. But she doesn't know it is her own husband doing all this. She kind of got suspicious. She knows her own daughter very well, so she would know how her daughter would sound, and she realized this might actually be a pre-recording and someone's doing something suspicious. So she did report that to the police, but nothing really came out of that, as the police didn't really take any further steps. They had no suspicion of anyone, nowhere near suspicion of Joseph Fritzl. So that got brushed off. Things carried on like this until the twins came, Alex and Michael. Now Michael, one of the twins that came later in 1997, he dies 2 days old. He had heavy breathing problems. Elizabeth, who was in the basement, literally begged Joseph to let him go to hospital before he died, and she was really upset. Now you guys gotta remember, being born underneath the ground, it's just dying in such an environment isn't even something out of the ordinary. It's actually very surprising that all of the others survived. They weren't even allowed any moment outside this basement. They didn't even have ventilation. When the police raided the house after, they found out the walls and the condition they were in. It was all moldy and slimy and disgusting. They couldn't even stay in there to investigate more than a few minutes before they had to leave and come back again later. It was just horrible, horrible conditions. After the twins were born and Michael dies, Alex, who was the other twin, got sent upstairs. The same method. They would leave a note saying his daughter is giving away the child for adoption because she can't take care of it, because she's in this cult where they're like strict rules in the cult and she's living her own way of life. Rosemary opens the door, his wife, she sees another baby, and they take it and they raise it as their own, as an adopted child. Things carry on later until Felix comes, and he's the last and final child who was born in that basement. He actually stayed underground in that basement. Elizabeth, who was their mother, before the kids came and before she had any children, in the first few years when she was being assaulted, she was depressed and she just wanted to take her own life. That was really disturbing. I mean, I can imagine just being on your own. Her life goal was just to end it all and not live anymore. She couldn't take it. Her father would come assault her every day. But after her kids were born, she kind of changed her perspective and she really got that sense of motivation and sense of different life goals. I mean, her only aim was to make sure her kids are safe as much as they were in danger. danger at that time. She wanted to raise them well, and she wanted to really give them a truth about reality and really raise them as normal kids, as normal as they possibly can. Now, obviously, they weren't raised in a normal environment. They were under the basement. They had to live their entire life underneath the ground. So they had no view of the outside world. They didn't know the sunrise in the morning. They didn't know that you can go to the shops, buy stuff. So you had to really educate them on this since they were young. So when Joseph would leave or when he would not be around, she would really try and get them to realize, look, this living condition is not normal. You shouldn't be in this basement. See, Joseph was doing the opposite. He would try and convince everyone, okay, this is how the world is. This is normal. We're just going to live here. And this is what life is about. And in that basement, they had low light, but they only had one thing that actually helped them to actually get a view of the outside, which is a TV. I forgot to mention this earlier. They had a TV in this basement so they could see the news and some other TV shows or whatnot that had on the TV. Elizabeth, their mother, was really trying to raise them right because she knew at some point they will get out. She was hoping for that. She was just hoping for a better future for their kids. She never gave up on her kids. That was really a spark in her life where she realized, okay, as horrible and as disturbing as things are, with the assaults happening, with abuse from the father, she's going to raise her kids right. She raised her daughters and her sons who were in the basement. And upstairs, the other 3 kids that she had, they lived with Joseph and Rosemary and they were raised by them. They still got abused, but it wasn't as horrible as living downstairs. In the year 2008, April the 19th, finally they catch a break. This is the year and the time they actually managed to escape. You would think that she could have escaped earlier because how can they stay, all of them living together in that basement? All this time they had to think about escaping. How did they not manage to escape earlier? But I forgot to really emphasize to this the fact that their father first conditioned them from when they were young. You guys are living normal lives now. You never had that experience where from young you are just taught things that you think this is how life is. So they didn't even have that thought that what are we doing here? Why are we not trying to get out? Now you gotta remember, Kirsten, her older child, was 19 and her son who was living in that basement is 18. So these are grown people at that time and they were still afraid of one old man. The whole life when they were young, they were getting abused by him every single day. It comes to a point where your mind can just not see through it. You're just conditioned that, okay, he is scary, I don't want to disobey him. He also brainwashes them in a way to make them think that he's like the fatherly figure. And another thing that I need to tell you guys is the basement was soundproofed. It was like a bunker. It wasn't just a little box basement where it's just some wooden door and you just break in. It was a steel door and they had several layers of doors. They had to walk through this corridor with another door and another. There was a total of 7 doors and locks they had to get through to even get to upstairs in the outside world. So escaping was very difficult, and for a mother 18 who was abused since she was young and the children who were raised in very unhealthy conditions, their health was so terrible that even their teeth were falling out, their face was pale, they didn't get the best food. All that put together and them not getting a view of the outside world really conditioned them to just live in that basement for all these years and delay the escape till all the way till 2008. The father, Joseph Fritzl, the one who locked them in the basement, also told Elizabeth and the kids that, listen, if you ever try to escape or try to get out of this basement or try anything with the doors, I have some gas bombs that will kill you instantly and it's gonna be a suicide mission. So she was fully convinced if she tries to get out, it's a suicide mission. No one's gonna hear her. Police weren't even looking for her. She knew the police weren't looking for her because her father convinced the world his daughter went away to join this random cult, and she had to write these letters to the police and to her mother telling her that she's living a normal life and she's just happy far away from the family. Convincing enough, no one came looking for her, and the whole time she was under that basement. Sorry, I know I delayed this escape for a while, but this escape was genuinely the best part of the story because this is the moment we were all waiting for, her getting out, finally getting relieved from this horrible experience. The year she came out was the 19th of April 2008. She was actually in her 40s now. So she started off as a young teen girl, 18, and she managed to get out when she was in her 40s. So that's her whole life gone. The only way she actually managed to escape wasn't because, oh, they pushed their way out or they found the locks or the keys. One of their daughters, Kirsten, the oldest one, she was 19 years old. After all these years in the horrible conditions, she became critically ill. She couldn't breathe properly. Elizabeth was really, really worried. She didn't want another of her kids to die. And she didn't even think, okay, I want to escape now. Her whole mindset was, okay, I don't really care. I just want to send my daughter to hospital. She didn't even want to go herself. Now, remember, Joseph wasn't letting anyone outside this bunker. It doesn't matter what happens. If they got ill, he'll just give them some tablets. This time, she realized that if her daughter did not go to hospital, she would die. And she was begging him and begging him and begging, please take her to hospital. And at some point, Joseph agreed. He was like, okay, you know what? She's gonna be upset. She begged him so much that he finally agreed, okay, he doesn't want the girl to die. So he's like, okay, you know what? I'll agree. We'll take her to the hospital. You gotta remember, this girl has been in that basement for her whole life. A 19-year-old is meant to be young. She's meant to be in her prime. That 19-year-old had all different, like the hospital instantly knew as soon as she got out that this is not normal. Something is going on, and they had to investigate, because when she came out, she wasn't like any normal 19-year-old. Half her teeth were fallen, her hair was all half white, her skin was really, really pale, and you can literally see her veins. I mean, the hospital instantly informed the police, because they were like, something's going on. And at first they didn't think it was Joseph. When he brought her to hospital, he had the story in mind that this is his granddaughter, and his daughter told him to send her to hospital, and that, you know, his daughter didn't want to take care of her. So he was actually blaming his daughter, who he kidnapped, that she is neglecting her children. So he stuck with that story, and he said, okay, listen, I just need you guys to check out my granddaughter, the 19-year-old. My daughter didn't take care of her, and she just wants her to get checked out. They weren't even questioning Joseph, they were questioning the mother. So they were like, where's the mother? And he was like, oh, the mother ran away to join a cult and she didn't take care of him. Once they reported her to the police, the authorities request more information about the mother. They were looking for her to the point where they even had to make a public report to find the mother. The girl that came out, she didn't just have any normal flu or some headache or something like that. She had kidney failures, her teeth were half missing. She didn't look like any normal 19-year-old. So this is some serious case of neglect, and the 19-year-old could have died. So Fritzl goes back to his daughter, tells her to write a note from Elizabeth explaining her illness. First of all, when they see this 19-year-old, they look at her medical history and see, how did she even get to this level? Like, did she have a history of this? And they found out that this girl, Kirsten, who was born in the basement, they found out that she had no history, no medical records, and she didn't even have a birth certificate or anything like this. So they were even more suspicious. Fritzl, he realized, okay, he might be in trouble. So he goes back to his daughter in the basement and he's like, oh, come on, you have to write this note. You have to tell them what's going on, you know, fake something, figure it out. And when he came back, the doctors and the police, when they saw the note, they kind of started to get suspicious of Joseph as well, because he was dodging a lot of questions. He wasn't very straightforward. He didn't know anything about this girl. See, this is the breakthrough point for Elizabeth. After all these years, this is her only chance of finally getting out, because now the police really put pressure on Joseph Fritzl. He was trying to avoid them. He just wanted the girl to get treated and to get her back and live back in the basement again. Elizabeth finally emerges from the basement because they had to get her out for investigation. Now he has no choice. He gets her out of the basement because he didn't want things to escalate further. He wanted her to tell the investigators that, look, listen, I abandoned my child, stick to the story, just don't mention anything about the basement. So the investigators, when they questioned her, they separated her from Joseph. So now she's alone. She finally got out of the basement. She saw the world. She saw everything. Her emotion, she was getting emotional. At that time, she didn't even think, okay, maybe I've made it out, because she was so afraid of Joseph, and she did not want to mess with him because he threatened her so much that when she got to the investigators, she actually stuck to the story and said, look, listen, I abandoned my children. Nothing's going on. I'm sorry about this. But then they got suspicious when they saw the state of Elizabeth herself. Now you gotta remember, she was in the basement for over 25 years. Her health was also not suitable for a lady who's meant to be 40 years old. It's still older than 19, but her health condition was even worse. Her whole face was changed. Her hair was grey. Her teeth were all half fallen out and rotten. You gotta imagine, this is not a normal woman as well. So they were like, something's up here. Joseph, he looked his age. I mean, he was older. He didn't have any of these health conditions, because remember, he gets to get out. So they see the contrary, and they decided to question them separately. So they questioned Elizabeth about her daughter until they finally realized, okay, you know what? Can you tell us the truth, please? Because at the time she was telling them a lie about how, you know, she abandoned her kids and she's in a cult and all that stuff. But she was so worried that she told the police that, listen, as long as you promise me one thing. And the police were like, okay, we will promise you, don't worry, what do you want? And she goes, promise me that after this investigation is over that you will make sure I never see my father again. And this is where they realize, okay, this is a breakthrough point. She's afraid of her father. It all made a bit more sense now. So she told them the full detail of the truth. And this is where things get better for her. Now the police are on her side. And this is a breakthrough moment. This is like the moment where she finally realized that there's a chance and there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The police took her side and they definitely investigated this. The secret basement was finally discovered by the police and the whole world was shocked. This story goes worldwide. They of course arrest Joseph Fritzl, and when the police find out about the gruesome truth of this story after investigating and talking to Elizabeth, they were so shocked and surprised at how this even happened. And they had to question the neighborhood, they had to question Rosemary, they had to question everyone else to really find out, did this really happen for all those years? Now she had to tell them every detail of the story and it took hours, but because of how disturbed they were by the story, they actually had to separate the investigation 2 hours at a time. So now the police know the full story. Elizabeth finally got protection from the evil father. We forgot to say one more thing. The kids, when they got out and finally saw the real world, they were really shocked to even see the real world. They were living in that basement their whole life and they've never seen a thing. Like imagine you've never seen a tree. Like imagine you're living in this world right now and you figure out, wait, outside of space, there's another world where people are living normally. You're going to be shocked. So they had that same experience. Wow. And they're all like grown children. They're 19, 18, and one of them was 6. For them, everything looked crazy. They've seen street lights, they're seeing shops, they're seeing buildings and other things. For them, that was really a shock. The whole thing made sense now. The police investigated this Joseph Fritzl, and this is where his punishment starts. On March 16th, 2009, a year later, Joseph Fritzl goes on trial in Austria, and he was charged with rape, incest, false imprisonment, slavery, murder of the infant Michael, because you remember one of the kids died because he forced them to live in that basement. Now he could get charged with murder. He was the cause of the death. I mean, he never let the child have a normal birth and he trapped them in that basement because of these health conditions. He never let him go to hospital. Of course, he's the evil guy who did all this. Now, this guy was so delusional. At first, he actually told the investigators that, no, I'm not an evil guy. I didn't do anything. I was actually protecting my own daughter. He was so deluded in his mind that he told the investigators, no, my daughter is in love with me and she was all consensual about this. We just raised a normal family, but I just was protecting from the outside evil. He was so deluded until he saw his own daughter in the trial and she was actually going against him in court. This is where I said, remember Rosemary, his wife? I have my own theory about her because in the official story, they're saying that she had no idea and she was just a normal wife. But in my theory, I genuinely feel like she knew what was going on. First of all, she lived in the same house for 25 years and seeing her husband go into the basement and her daughter being missing, him not really blinking an eye about his own daughter being missing, it just doesn't add up. She's the mother, she knows the family very well, she knows how Joseph is like, because remember, Joseph had a past as well. I'm not going to get full detail about his past, but he wasn't always a normal guy. When he was young, growing up, he used to do these creepy things where he would sneak onto people and he wasn't normal from the start. So his own wife, who fell in love with him when she was 17, in my own theory, this isn't official, but in my own theory, I have a feeling that she knew what was going on, but she was covering up for him. And another thing that will back my theory is the fact that in court, when he was getting trialed, she didn't even stand up in court against him. She didn't even attend to the hearing, and she still didn't divorce him after all the allegations came out. If you just find out your own husband has been doing all these horrible things to your daughter and did all this crazy stuff and you're still with him, that just shows that you probably knew all along and you just didn't care. She was definitely mentally not there as well. They investigated this further and this investigation took them a while. Joseph was convincing them that, you know, he was a normal person. He was not a monster. He's like, I'm not a monster. She was consensual, until he saw his daughter stand up against him in trial and she confessed about how horrible the conditions were and how much he would assault her. He then realized, okay, maybe I was wrong. And then he later changed his mind. He was like, okay, I'm guilty. So this is what I mean by Joseph being a bit mentally not there. He genuinely thought he was fine until he saw his daughter crying and confessing and in pain. And then he realized, okay, he is the monster that they say he is. He admitted to everything. He took the life sentence. He's still in prison. After this, Elizabeth and her children enter therapy. Of course, they need therapy. Now, remember when I told you I wanted to tell you a story about Joseph's mother, and I didn't want to confuse this? Now, this is a time to tell you. Now, why was Joseph so messed up in the head? You gotta remember, Joseph didn't have a normal upbringing at all. His mother also gave birth to him in a way that she kind of hated him. She abused him so much. He even confessed that his mother beat him up until he was bleeding and left him on the floor. He had a very bad past with his mother. He just got abused until he got older and stronger and managed to stand up against his mother. And at some point, this is the crazy part, he didn't just lock his daughter in the basement. When he grew up, his own mother came to visit them in the house and she wanted to live them for a while. I don't know if she was struggling. And that time, Joseph was older and stronger and his mother was getting older. He wanted to get revenge on his mother. She was the source of all this abuse when she started this whole pattern and this whole domino effect of how this even happened and how this got to this point. He decided to trick his mom to go in the attic, and he actually locked his mom in the attic until she died. So for about 20 years, his mom was in the attic. He abused her and never let her out until she died as well. That was what makes the story even crazier. So this guy was full-time psycho mode. The aftermath of the main story, which was the girl in the basement, Elizabeth and her children, they go into therapy and rehab, and they try to slowly get used to living a normal life, and they got protection and lived in a secret location with new names. They slowly adapt to normal life outside. Rosemary divorces Joseph and lives separately. So at the end, Rosemary does end up divorcing Joseph, and the case becomes one of the most shocking examples of captivity and abuse in modern history. This case actually changed the law in Austria because you gotta remember, Joseph had a past of sexual crimes, but because he stayed clean for a year and a half, they wiped out his entire criminal record where he looked clean. So that's why no one got suspicious of him. Remember, Joseph had a past where even him growing up, he used to sneak into his neighbors and watch people getting dressed. At some point, even assaulted one nurse. He sneaked into a house from the window and he did sexually abuse her, but the police didn't take this further. He just got a few months of prison and got released, and then after a year and a half they just wiped his record clean, which is why he managed to get away without even having any suspicion on him. That would complete the story of the girl in the basement, and hopefully I didn't miss any key points, and hopefully I narrated this in a way that it all made sense. But hopefully you guys really learned something from the story. I'm just glad that they managed to get away from this evil monster and he finally got locked up in prison is where he belongs. Thank you guys for watching. It's been a pleasure.